Isabella I of Castile, born in 1451, grew up in a Spain divided into rival kingdoms, unstable politics, and deep religious divisions. But from the moment she took the throne in 1474, she was determined to change that. Her marriage to Ferdinand of Aragon in 1469 was not just romance, it was strategy. Together, they became known as the Catholic Monarchs, uniting Castile and Aragon into the foundation of a single Spanish state. This partnership reshaped the map of Europe. Under their rule, the long Reconquista finally ended in 1492 with the capture of Granada, the last Muslim stronghold on the Iberian Peninsula. That same year, Isabella sponsored a risky voyage by a Genoese sailor named Christopher Columbus. Most experts doubted him, but her support launched the expedition that accidentally revealed the Americas to Europe. Within decades, Spain controlled vast colonies in the New World. Gold, silver, and trade pouring in made Spain a global superpower. But Isabella's reign wasn't only expansion. She also enforced strict Catholic unity, establishing the Spanish Inquisition, which targeted Jews, Muslims, and alleged heretics. To her supporters, she was a defender of the faith. To critics, it was ruthless religious control. By the time of her death in 1504, Isabella had turned Spain from a fractured land into a united kingdom at the center of world politics. Her choices, backing Columbus, uniting crowns, enforcing religious uniformity, still echo today. She remains one of the most influential female rulers in history, shaping not just Spain, but the very start of the modern world.
Ferdinand II of Aragon, born in 1452, is remembered as the king who, together with his wife Isabella I of Castile, transformed Spain into a united power. Their marriage in 1469 created what we know as the Catholic Monarchs, a legendary royal partnership that changed the course of history. Ferdinand brought the crown of Aragon, stretching across parts of Spain, Sicily, and Naples, while Isabella ruled Castile, the largest kingdom in Iberia. By joining forces, they didn't just merge territories, they merged destinies, laying the foundation of modern Spain. The defining act came in 1492, when Ferdinand and Isabella completed the Reconquista, ending nearly 800 years of Muslim rule in Iberia, with the capture of Granada. This victory was more than symbolic. It unified Spain under Christian rule and marked a turning point in European history. That same year, their support of Columbus's voyage opened the gateway to the Americas, and Spain began to rise as a world empire. Ferdinand was also a sharp military strategist. He reformed the Spanish army, strengthening professional forces that would dominate European battlefields in the 16th century. Abroad, he expanded his influence in the Mediterranean and secured alliances through politics and marriage, turning Spain into a major continental power. On religion, Ferdinand pushed for a strictly Catholic state. With Isabella, he backed the Spanish Inquisition, expelling Jews and Muslims who resisted conversion. It reinforced loyalty to Rome, but also sowed centuries of fear and division. When Ferdinand died in 1516, Spain was no longer just a collection of quarrelsome kingdoms. It was a centralized power, prepared to dominate Europe and the New World. His reign cemented Spain not only as a Catholic bastion, but as one of the era's superpowers.
Charles I of Spain, also known as Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, was born in 1500 into the most powerful royal network in Europe. By a twist of dynastic marriages, he inherited Spain, its vast colonies in the Americas, the Netherlands, parts of Italy, Austria, and even claims to Germany. His empire was so huge, people said it was the first where the sun never set. As king, Charles faced challenges that would define European history. In 1517, Martin Luther sparked the Protestant Reformation. Charles, a devout Catholic, fought relentlessly to defend Rome's authority, leading to endless wars with reformist princes in Germany. At the same time, he was clashing with France over territory and holding off the expansion of the Ottoman Empire under Suleiman the Magnificent. Yet while Europe burned, the Americas transformed Spain's fortunes. Gold and silver from Mexico and Peru flooded into his treasury, fueling both his armies and Europe's economy, but also inflation and debt. Overwhelmed, Charles eventually abdicated. In 1556, he divided the empire. His son Philip received Spain, its colonies, and the Netherlands, while his brother Ferdinand took Austria and the imperial crown. Charles spent his last years in a monastery, exhausted by wars that consumed his reign. He is remembered as both the ruler of unmatched glory and the man crushed by the impossible weight of holding a world together. Philip II, born in 1527, inherited from his father Charles I a kingdom overflowing with riches and responsibilities. His reign marked the absolute height of Spain's imperial power, with overseas territories stretching across the Americas, Europe, Africa, and even Asia after the conquest of the Philippines, which were named in his honor. Philip saw himself as the champion of Catholicism in a deeply divided Europe. He fought to suppress Protestant movements, battled the Ottoman navy in the Mediterranean, and ruled the Netherlands, where his harsh measures sparked open rebellion. The event most associated with him is the Spanish Armada of 1588. In one of history's most dramatic clashes, Philip launched a massive fleet against Protestant England and Queen Elizabeth I. The Armada aimed to invade, but storms, poor planning, and English resistance led to disaster. Spain's aura of invincibility was shattered. Still, Philip's reign wasn't just decline. He strengthened Spanish administration, built the Grand Palace Monastery of El Escorial, and saw Spain dominate global trade routes. He also oversaw a Catholic cultural flowering, the Spanish golden age of literature, art, and music. But the cracks were clear. Endless wars drained treasure, continuous silver imports destabilized Spain's economy, and revolts spread across territories. By the time Philip died in 1598, Spain remained powerful, but the seeds of decline were planted. He's remembered both as the ruler of the mightiest empire on earth and the man whose hubris showed that even empires can stumble.
Philip III, born in 1578, came to the throne at just 20 years old. Unlike his powerful father, Philip II, his reign was defined not by personal strength, but by how much he relied on his advisors. He delegated enormous authority to court favorites, known as validos, the most famous being the Duke of Lerma. While this allowed him to avoid messy politics, it opened the door to widespread corruption, nepotism, and mismanagement. During his reign, Spain was constantly pulled into costly European conflicts. He kept the war going in the Netherlands against Protestant rebels, drained the treasury supporting Catholic causes abroad, and in 1609 his government made the fateful decision to expel the Moriscos, Muslims who had converted to Christianity. Nearly 300,000 people, many skilled artisans and farmers, were forced out, crippling parts of Spain's economy. Yet despite political weakness, Philip III presided over an undeniably brilliant cultural moment. Writers like Miguel de Cervantes, who published Don Quixote in this era, and painters such as El Greco pushed Spanish art into global fame. This contrast between declining power abroad and golden creativity at home defined his reign. By the time Philip III died in 2016, Spain's military dominance was already fading, its economy strained, and its government addicted to costly wars. History remembers him less as a ruler and more as an example of what happens when leadership is outsourced and when national glory hides serious cracks underneath.
Philip IV took the throne in 1621, just 16 years old, inheriting a Spain already bleeding from wars and debts. His reign, lasting more than 40 years, became the symbol of Spain's decline in military and political dominance, but at the very same time, its greatest cultural explosion. Philip was personally devoted to the arts and became a patron of painters, poets, and playwrights. He surrounded himself with genius. His court painter was Diego Velázquez, one of the greatest artists in history, while authors like Calderón de la Barca carried forward Spain's literary golden age. If Philip II gave Spain empire, Philip IV gave it enduring masterpieces of culture. But wars consumed him. Spain's involvement in the 30 Years' War against Protestant powers drained treasure and manpower. Military defeats in Flanders, Italy, and even against rebellious Portugal eroded Spain's international dominance. By mid-century, France replaced Spain as Europe's leading power. At home, famines, plague, and soaring taxes crushed the population, while Philip leaned heavily on his valido, the Count Duke of Olivares, whose reforms failed to reverse decline. Despite his cultural legacy, Philip ended his long reign with a wounded empire. No longer the unstoppable superpower his grandfather Charles I and father Philip II had built. When he died in 1665, Spain faced bankruptcy, lost wars, and fading prestige. Yet paradoxically, his age is remembered as the pinnacle of Spanish art and literature, giving his reign one of history's strangest dual legacies: decline in power, brilliance in culture.
Charles II, the Bewitched, born in 1661, became one of history's most tragic monarchs. Known as El Hechizado, the Bewitched, his nickname came from his frail body, severe illnesses, and bizarre appearance, products of generations of Habsburg inbreeding. Charles struggled to walk, speak clearly, and even eat properly. He was mentally limited, sickly his entire life, and unable to produce children. In him, centuries of dynastic glory came crashing down into fragility. His portrait became a literal symbol of a collapsing empire. Government in his reign was riddled with factionalism. Ministers and foreign powers jostled for influence, knowing Spain's immense territories, from the Americas to the Netherlands, would soon be up for grabs. Charles tried to strengthen his authority but rarely succeeded. When he died in 1700, childless, the Spanish crown had no clear heir. His will named Philip of Anjou, grandson of Louis XIV of France, as his successor. That decision triggered the War of Spanish Succession, one of Europe's largest conflicts, involving nearly every major power. Charles II left little in terms of achievements, but his reign marks the dramatic close of the Habsburg dynasty in Spain. His life and death showed how dynastic decline, illness, and poor governance could destabilize not just a country, but an entire continent.
Philip V, born in 1683, was the first Bourbon king of Spain, imported from France after the War of Spanish Succession. He was the grandson of Louis XIV, the French Sun King, and his victory in that war permanently shifted Spain from Habsburg to Bourbon rule. The war itself was brutal. From 1701 to 1714, Spain became the battlefield of Europe, with Britain, Austria, and the Dutch fighting to block a Franco-Spanish supermonarchy. In the end, Philip kept the Spanish throne, but renounced any right to inherit France, keeping the two crowns separate. As king, he reshaped Spain along French centralized lines. He weakened old regional privileges, improved administration, and reorganized the military. These Bourbon reforms marked a modernization push after years of decline. Philip's reign also saw the empire stabilized. While Spain never regained its old dominance, it remained a major colonial power, stretching from the Americas to Asia. Culturally, he sponsored art and music influenced by French tastes, reshaping Spanish identity for the Bourbon era. His reign was long but unstable. He even temporarily abdicated in favor of his son, only to reclaim the throne later, suffering from depression and breakdowns. Still, Philip set Spain on a new path. By his death in 1746, the Bourbons were firmly entrenched, and Spain was no longer the Europe-tired relic it had been under Charles II, but a kingdom on the path to reform and recovery.
Charles III, born in 1716, is often celebrated as one of Spain's greatest rulers. An enlightened monarch, he reigned from 1759 to 1788 and left a legacy of modernization and reform that reshaped Spanish society. Charles believed in progress, science, and rational government. He launched ambitious urban reforms, redesigning Madrid with wide avenues, clean streets, and iconic landmarks like the Puerta de Alcalá. Foreign observers called Madrid the most improved capital in Europe. Economically, Charles boosted agriculture, improved trade, and limited the power of private monopolies. He pushed through reforms to streamline taxation and reduce corruption. In the empire, he encouraged Bourbon reforms, trying to tighten Spanish control over colonies and increase revenue. Culturally, Charles sponsored research, universities, and the arts. He supported botany, archaeology, and astronomy, symbols of Enlightenment ideals. At the same time, he reduced the power of the church, banning the Jesuits when they resisted his authority. His era wasn't without conflict. Spain lost Florida to Britain during the 7 Years' War, though it later recovered territories like Louisiana. But overall, Charles's reign strengthened Spain after a century of decline. By the time he died in 1788, Spain was more modern, wealthier, and on firmer footing than at any point since its golden age. Today, Charles III is remembered as the best mayor of Madrid and arguably the Bourbon king who did the most to prepare Spain for the modern world.
Ferdinand VII, born in 1784, was first hailed as El Deseado, the desired one, when he took the throne in 1808. After years under French domination and Napoleon's brother Joseph on the throne, Spaniards longed for their native king. But the dream turned sour almost immediately. During the Napoleonic era, Spanish rebels drafted the Constitution of 1812, one of the most liberal in Europe, promising rights, representation, and limits on monarchy. When Ferdinand returned in 1814, instead of embracing it, he abolished it, restored absolutism, and unleashed repression on anyone demanding reform. His reign turned him from the desired to the felon king in the eyes of liberals. The contradictions defined his rule, constant swings between small concessions and brutal crackdowns. Uprisings flared across Spain, and in the colonies, independence movements exploded. By the 1820s, Spain lost most of its vast empire in the Americas, leaving only Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. His obsession with absolutism paralyzed Spain. When he died in 1833, he left behind not progress, but division. His decision to pass the throne to his daughter Isabella II, bypassing male relatives, triggered the Carlist Wars, bloody conflicts that would tear apart Spain for decades. Ferdinand VII is remembered not as a savior, but as a symbol of reaction, proof of how clinging to the old order at any cost can accelerate a nation's decline.
Isabella II. Her reign began dramatically. She became queen at just 3 years old in 1833 after her father, Ferdinand VII's, death. Her accession sparked the Carlist Wars as conservatives rallied around her uncle, Don Carlos, claiming the throne by traditional succession. The conflict between Carlists and liberals would dominate her reign. Raised amid court intrigue, Isabella was more a pawn than a ruler in her youth, manipulated by rival factions. As she grew, politics in Spain grew messier, alternating liberal and conservative governments, deep corruption, and constant rebellion. She never managed to stabilize her country. Personally, Isabella's life attracted scandal. Allegations of affairs, favoritism, and political meddling undermined her credibility. While she did support modernization projects, railways, and education expansion, her chaotic court overshadowed reforms. Externally, Spain's global power faded further. Most of Latin America was already lost, and weakness defined Spain internationally. In 1868, her enemies finally struck. The Glorious Revolution, a coalition of progressives, officers, and Republicans, forced her into exile in France. She abdicated in favor of her son, Alfonso, in 1870, though the monarchy itself collapsed briefly into experimentation with republics and short-lived foreign rulers. Isabella lived until 1904, but history remembers her reign as a mirror of 19th century Spain. Turbulence, factionalism, and weakness. She was both a queen and a symbol of how instability at the top rippled into decades of national crisis.
Alfonso XII, born in 1857, became king after one of the most chaotic periods in Spanish history. His mother, Isabella II, had been deposed. Spain tried a short-lived republic and even invited a foreign prince, Amadeo of Savoy, to rule. None of it worked. In 1874, a coup restored the Bourbons, and the young Alfonso, just 17, took the throne. Alfonso quickly earned a reputation as a moderate and practical king. His government pushed for pacification and reconciliation. The first task was ending the bloody Third Carlist War, which finally concluded in 1876. At the same time, he quelled Republican revolts, bringing relative peace to a fractured nation. Politically, his reign anchored the new Constitution of 1876, which created a constitutional monarchy with alternating conservative and liberal governments, a system known as the Turno Pacifico. Though flawed and often rigged,
It stabilized Spain compared to the upheavals of earlier decades. Alfonso also restored Spain's international prestige somewhat by focusing on progress, railways, industry, and public health improved. He worked to rebuild trust between monarchy and people, earning respect for his discipline and personal integrity. Tragically, Alfonso's reign was cut short. In 1885, at just 27, he died of tuberculosis. Yet in less than 11 years, he turned Spain from chaos toward stability, remembered as the monarch who reconciled a divided kingdom and gave Spaniards a taste of peace after a century of turmoil.
Alfonso XIII, born in 1886, was a king from birth, literally. His father, Alfonso XII, died before he was born, so he entered the world already crowned. His reign began officially when he took full control in 1902, at just 16 years old. At first, Alfonso symbolized hope for a modern Spain. The country was rebuilding after losing Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines in 1898, the last of its great empire. During his rule, Spain saw rapid modernization, railways, industry, and cultural energy. But his reign was overshadowed by constant crises. In foreign affairs, the disastrous war in Morocco led to humiliations like the Battle of Annual in 1921, where tens of thousands of Spanish troops were lost, one of the worst defeats in Spain's military history. At home, politics spiraled. Corruption, unstable governments, and social unrest eroded trust in constitutional monarchy. In 1923, Alfonso openly supported General Miguel Primo de Rivera's dictatorship, effectively abandoning parliamentary democracy. At first, it brought order, but it collapsed by 1930, leaving Alfonso blamed for betrayal of the system he was meant to uphold. By 1931, the monarchy had lost all credibility. Municipal elections turned into a referendum. Spain voted for a republic, and Alfonso went into exile, never formally abdicating. His long life, ending in 1941, left a cautionary legacy. The king who wanted to modernize ended up presiding over disillusionment, paving the road to the Spanish Civil War.
Francisco Franco, born in 1892, was not a king, but his rule shaped the monarchy's fate more than any monarch in the 20th century. A career soldier, he rose through Spain's military ranks during colonial wars in Morocco. By 1936, when civil war broke out between a leftist republic and conservative forces, Franco emerged as the leader of the nationalists. With the support of Hitler and Mussolini, he won the brutal Spanish Civil War in 1939. Franco ruled Spain as Caudillo, a dictator, for nearly 40 years. He suppressed opposition, censored the press, and executed or imprisoned tens of thousands. His Spain was staunchly Catholic, conservative, and isolated after World War II. Yet over time, especially during the Cold War, Franco repositioned Spain as a strategic anti-communist ally, earning U.S. support in the 1950s. Economically, his early policies led to stagnation, but by the 1960s, Spain experienced the Spanish miracle: fast growth, tourism, and industrial development. Still, his regime remained authoritarian. Franco's greatest political maneuver was managing the monarchy's return. In 1969, he named Juan Carlos, grandson of Alfonso XIII, as his successor. He expected Juan Carlos to continue authoritarian rule. Instead, Franco's death in 1975 opened the door to democracy. Franco's legacy is one of contradiction. He preserved order but silenced freedom. He rebuilt the state but froze progress. And he restored monarchy, though his vision for it quickly unraveled. His name remains one of the most polarizing in Spanish history.
Juan Carlos I, born in 1938, was groomed under Franco's dictatorship, but shocked the world by taking Spain in an entirely new direction. Crowned in 1975, just 2 days after Franco's death, he was expected to maintain authoritarian rule. Instead, Juan Carlos defied expectation and became the architect of Spain's democratic transition. In the late 1970s, he skillfully guided Spain away from dictatorship toward parliamentary monarchy. He supported reformist Prime Minister Adolfo Suarez, legalized political parties, and oversaw the creation of the 1978 Constitution, which enshrined democracy while retaining the crown. His defining moment came in 1981, during an attempted coup by military officers who stormed Parliament. Juan Carlos appeared on national television, dressed in his military uniform, and ordered the rebels to stand down. His brave stance crushed the coup and cemented him as the defender of democracy. For decades, he was celebrated as the king who gave Spaniards freedom without bloodshed. But later years tarnished his reputation. Scandals over corruption, luxury lifestyles, and personal controversies eroded public trust. By 2014, facing immense pressure, Juan Carlos abdicated in favor of his son, Felipe VI. Today, his legacy remains complex. The king who steered Spain from dictatorship to democracy, but whose later actions dimmed the shine of that historic achievement. Still, his role in ensuring a peaceful democratic transition secures him a place as one of the most consequential monarchs in Spanish history.